The miracle doctor won't be a kept man. My heart belongs ashore. Chapter 1. Ack. Kiran York had been fast asleep with his head slumped against the back of his train seat. Suddenly, he woke with a yelp and shot to his feet. He looked like he had just seen a ghost. He was around 180 centimeters tall and in excellent shape. When he stood up, he looked like an imposing Greek statue. He had a tanned, handsome, and spirited face that denoted a man who was tough and resolute in his ways. Despite being dressed in rags, he still looked masculine, which caused the coquettish woman sitting beside him to fall for his charms immediately. She moved closer and tried leaning against him. In his panic, Kiran shifted away from her and decided to head to the washroom to wash his face. His expression was dark. Lately, his mental state had been horrible. Just a month ago, he learned that he had a fiancée called Snow Xander in Bayville, a city in his country. He had thought that she was gorgeous and wanted to meet her. However, when he received her photo, he found, to his dismay, that she was ugly. Not only was she ugly, but she was also huge. She was at least 125 kilograms. She did not look healthy at all. How could he marry someone so unhealthy? He must have been an idiot to have accepted the engagement. How could he have a fiancée like this when he was supposed to be a doctor? From that moment on, he often dreamed about Snow Xander. In his dreams, she looked like a demon. When he had enough of having those nightmares, he decided to go to Bayville and cancel the engagement. However, he even had a nightmare on the train, and he was in so much despair that he wanted to cry. Damn it! He swore to himself that he must absolutely cancel the engagement. Then, if he had to marry Fiona, a village girl, or Madam Wilson, a widow, once he returned to Phoenix Hill, he would do it. That was still better than marrying Snow Xander. Kiran felt much lighter at heart after making that decision. He started walking faster to the washroom. Grandpa, what's wrong? Somebody help. Is it a heart attack again? Have the train conductor look for a doctor. When Kiran passed by a row of seats, he heard people talking and asking for help. He stopped, then strode toward an old man lying on the floor. He was in his 70s, and his face was pale. A tight scowl marred his face, and he was struggling to breathe. He might die at any moment. Kiran had studied medicine under his master in Phoenix Hill since he was a young boy. Therefore, he could tell with just a glance that the old man was suffering from acute myocardial infarction. If he did not help him, the old man would die in under 3 minutes. His attention then fell on the woman who called out for help. She was a long-haired brunette about the same age as he was, and her face was as beautiful as a goddess. She was much prettier than Fiona and Madam Wilson, and she was basically Aphrodite compared to Snow Xander. At that moment, the woman's eyes were full of worry and fear. She looked pitiful. "Is there a doctor on board? Please save my grandfather," the woman was still shouting anxiously. Her eyes were watery with tears. "Wait, I've already contacted the train master." A train conductor hurried over to comfort the woman. Right then, the old man convulsed and his body became stiff. "Let me take a look." A man dressed in nice clothes walked over and introduced himself. "I'm Adrian Lane. I'm the director of Bayville Hospital's cardiology department." "Oh, thank you." The woman thanked him profusely. "The old man sure is lucky." The other people in the train compartment held on to hope that the old man could be saved. But after Adrian examined the old man, he shook his head in resignation. "I can't help him." "No, Grandpa." The woman broke down and held her grandfather. Everyone else fell silent. The news that the old man was about to die filled the train compartment with an air of graveness. "Let me try." Kiran pushed his way through with a bottle of pills in hand. Before anyone could ask him who he was, he shoved a pill into the old man's mouth. The old man had been stiff and did not react to any external stimulus. At that moment, he shuddered and coughed up a mouthful of black blood. Color returned to his pale face, and he started breathing again. Chapter 2. Kiran gave him several other pills. Then, he got up to continue heading toward the washroom. "My God, is this real? He's a miracle doctor," Adrian cried out in shock. The woman and the other people in the compartment felt like they were dreaming. Everything felt just so surreal. The director of Bayville Hospital's cardiology department had been unable to save the old man, but Kiran had managed to do it with just a few pills. Kiran did not realize what they were thinking. He did, however, walk to the washroom in the next compartment because he was still unsettled by his nightmare. He was also embarrassingly sweaty from it. Half an hour later, the train arrived at Bayville. Kiran got out of the train and walked out of the train station. Then 4 burly men blocked his path. Kiran frowned and thought, "Does the Xander family know that I'm here? Are they going to force me to marry Snow Xander?" His expression turned cold when he thought of that possibility. Rage swelled in his chest. Just when he was about to start yelling at them, an old man called out to him, "Don't misunderstand, my boy." Kiran looked toward the voice, and he saw the old man he had saved on the train just now. The animosity within him faded, but he remained on guard. "What is it? Thank you for saving my life." The old man sent away the 4 burly men with a wave of his hand. He then walked over with the woman supporting him. Once he was in front of Kiran, he extended his hand. "What's your name?" "I don't think it's necessary for me to introduce myself." Kiran knew that the Xander family was one of the richest families in Bayville. He was worried that plenty of people would want to get to know them. Therefore, he did not want to give away his name. He was afraid that the old man might sell him out to the Xander family later. The old man did not mind. He just nodded. "You don't look like you're from around here. Would you mind having a chat in my car?" Kiran frowned and wanted to reject his request, but he noticed that the woman beside him was frowning in deep thought. He could see that the old man was no ordinary man. The Xander family was definitely not going to let him cancel the engagement. After all, no one would actually be willing to marry Snow Xander. Anyone would be worried about Snow Xander croaking in the next minute due to her weight. Who would want a spouse who could not take care of herself? Most importantly, he did not know anything about the Xander family while they knew about him. This was unfair. Perhaps he could get some useful information from the old man. Kiran nodded. Delighted, the old man beckoned Kiran into the car. Kiran, the woman, and the old man sat in an elongated Lincoln and sent everyone else away. "I'm Harold Xander." "What's your name, young man?" the old man asked with a smile. "Xander?" Kiran did not offer his name in return. He even appeared wary and tense. The woman wanted to stand up, but Harold stopped her. "You seem to be angry with the Xander family, young man," the old man commented. "Are there multiple Xander families in Bayville?" Kiran asked. Harold raised his hands and extended a finger on each hand. The woman was shocked. There was only one Xander family in Bayville. What was Harold trying to imply? Kiran sighed in relief. By the looks of it, Harold was not part of the Xander family to which Snow Xander belonged. After all, if Harold had such a beautiful and healthy-looking granddaughter, there was no way he would allow another one of his granddaughters to become morbidly obese. When Harold saw Kiran relaxing, he asked kindly, "Do you have a grudge against the Xander family?" Kiran shook his head and pulled a long face. "I don't hold a grudge against them. I'm just engaged to someone from that family." "Engaged?" Harold was shocked, but delight flashed in his eyes. Was the young man Kiran York? The woman's frown became even more pronounced. Chapter 3. "You're engaged to someone in the Xander family?" Harold asked while his eyes were fixed on Kiran. Hearing the question, Kiran flew into a rage. "That morbidly obese Snow Xander is my fiancée." "Your fiancée is Snow Xander?" Harold was ecstatic. He looked at Kiran even more kindly than before. Meanwhile, the woman was so shocked that her mind turned blank. She was Snow Xander. Her grandfather had told her before that her fiancé lived on Phoenix Hill, and she was to prepare to get married to him. So she had photoshopped a photo of herself and sent it to Phoenix Hill. Who would have thought that her grandfather's savior would be her fiancé, Kiran York? This was too much of a coincidence. Kiran was so traumatized by the image of Snow in his mind's eye that he did not notice Harold and Snow's reactions. He nodded and said, "I came to Bayville to cancel the engagement." "You want to cancel the engagement?" Harold and Snow cried at the same time. Rage burned in Harold's eyes, and he glared at Snow. He could already guess that Snow did something because she did not want to get married. Meanwhile, delight flashed in Snow's eyes. "He wants to cancel the engagement?" "Yes." However, rage soon replaced the delight. "How dare he refuse to marry me? I'm the most beautiful woman in Bayville. If anyone was canceling any engagements, it should be her. Why was he the one who wanted to cancel the engagement?" Kiran pulled a long face and said, "Snow Xander is morbidly obese and looks so unhealthy. I have nightmares about her. She looks unfit, and that's putting it mildly. If I don't cancel the engagement, I'm sure my reputation will suffer." I'm a doctor after all." Harold nearly laughed. Snow clenched her fists tight and wanted to punch Kiran. In what way did she look morbidly obese? However, when she remembered what she did, she could only swallow the words at the tip of her tongue. She just thought, "Cancel it. Once you do, I'll tell you who I really am, and I'll make you regret it. You could have had a beautiful wife. You'll be so angry when you find out." Harold looked at Kiran in delight. He was not just happy that Kiran was a doctor, but he was also thinking about how the York family finally had someone to take revenge for them. He could finally rest easy. He sighed theatrically. There is indeed a morbidly obese woman in the Xander family called Snow Xander. Snow was so angry that she nearly burst into tears. What did Harold mean by that? There was only one Xander family, and she was the only Snow Xander around. "But I think it's going to be difficult for you to cancel your engagement," Harold continued while ignoring Snow's reaction. "What do you mean?" Kiran asked. "The Xander family is a huge and powerful family. If you cancel the engagement, you'll humiliate them. Besides, you're handsome and healthy-looking, while Snow Xander is morbidly obese. She'll definitely fall in love with you when she sees you and won't let you cancel the engagement." Harold analyzed the situation for Kiran. Kiran frowned in thoughtful silence. He had come down from Phoenix Hill behind his master's back. Knowing his master, he would definitely not allow Kiran to cancel the engagement if he learned about it. He felt troubled. When Snow heard Harold talking about how unhealthy and big she was, she felt so offended that she wanted to cry. She was healthy. If she was considered unfit, then the bedridden patients in hospitals might as well already be declared dead. Also, she was at a perfectly healthy weight and looked beautiful. She was so beautiful that plenty of men in Bayville were lining up to win her heart. But Harold was calling her big, unhealthy, and undesirable. Kiran then remembered his nightmare, and his resolve was strengthened once again. "I don't care what the Xander family thinks. I have to cancel the engagement." Snow wanted to tell him that he was free to do so, but her words once again died on her tongue when Harold glared at her. Suddenly, Harold thought of something. "Honestly, you don't have to cancel your engagement with Snow Xander." "What?" Kiran asked. "What do you mean? Both you and Snow Xander are single. If either one of you gets married, the engagement will be nullified," Harold suggested with a smile. Chapter 4. Delight rose in Kiran's eyes, but it soon faded away, and he grumbled. Who would want to marry someone who might die from a heart attack at any moment? "Ha ha!" Harold laughed and managed to stop Snow from going berserk with rage. Snow dug her nails into her palms but felt nothing. Displeasure burned in her heart as she thought, "Screw him! I'm going to make him regret letting go of the most beautiful woman in Bayville." Harold ignored Snow's fuming and said, "Since Snow can't get married, why don't you get a wife instead? If you have a wife, it's impossible for the Xander family to have Snow Xander serve as your mistress. By then, the Xander family will cancel the engagement on their own." Snow whipped her head to Harold. What did he mean by that? Their engagement was still valid. If Kiran married someone else, he would humiliate her. Kiran's eyes lit up. He thanked Harold. "Got it. Thanks, Mr. Xander." But soon he looked troubled again. Harold asked with a smile, "Is something troubling you?" Kiran sighed. "I don't know anyone in Bayville. If I had known I could do this, I would have married Fiona or Madam Wilson. One might just be a village girl, and the other a widow, but they're both way better than Snow Xander." Snow wanted to choke him. This was getting out of hand. He actually said that a village girl and a widow were better than her. If Harold had not stopped her, she would have started screaming at Kiran. Harold laughed again. "How can you say that you don't know anyone in Bayville? We know you, and you saved me." Kiran was delighted. Harold was right, so, he shamelessly said, "Mr. Xander, could you introduce me to a woman who's willing to get into a fake marriage with me? I'll owe you one." Snow immediately looked toward Harold. Would he help Kiran? Harold nodded. "Of course. I have a suggestion." "Go on," Kiran said. "You should marry a beautiful and healthy woman. Then, when the Xander family cancels the engagement, they'll learn that only a beautiful and healthy-looking woman is worthy of you, and that Snow Xander can never hope to compare to that woman," Harold said. Kiran was delighted, and he nodded with a smile. "I see. That's an amazing suggestion. Please help me look for someone like that." "You're welcome." Harold waved away Kiran's gratitude and said, "What do you think of my granddaughter?" "Her?" Kiran cried out in surprise. "No, Snow cried out. Harold's expression turned dark. He clutched his chest and glared at Snow. Snow was about to argue against marrying Kiran, but the words died on her tongue. She was supposed to be a good granddaughter, and she loved her grandfather. If she caused her grandfather to suffer from a heart attack again right after he just recovered from one, wouldn't he die? Hence, her face turned pale. She bowed her head and said nothing else. Kiran looked at Snow. When he saw her on the train just now, he knew that she was a tall woman, even though she had been squatting on the floor. Now that he was looking at her again, he found that she was around 170 centimeters tall. She wore a fitted black pencil skirt and had a perfect, curvaceous figure that made her look incredibly seductive. She had a beautiful oval face, bright almond-shaped eyes, delicate features, and long eyelashes. She looked as beautiful as a doll. She was the most beautiful woman Kiran had ever seen, and he would die happy if he had a wife as beautiful as her. Most importantly, he would not have to worry about her dying of a heart attack at any moment. When Snow saw Kiran's eyes light up, she sneered, "Have you finally noticed just how beautiful I am? Unfortunately for you, I'm not going to. As thanks for saving my life, I'll let you marry my granddaughter." Harold crushed Snow's hopes. Snow wanted to argue, but Harold quickly clutched his chest and put on a pained expression. He made it seem like he was about to get another heart attack. She could only suppress her anger. "Thank you, Mr. Xander. Once I cancel my engagement, I'll divorce your granddaughter immediately so that she can be a free woman again," Kiran said. "Let's go to the city hall now." Harold looked at Snow. "Tell the driver to start driving." Snow was speechless. Chapter 5. "Sir, aren't you supposed to be happy to marry such a beautiful woman?" The photographer reminded Kiran to smile when he saw how tense Kiran was. Kiran knew that he was faking his marriage. Snow was helping him. In fact, Harold had very attentively asked someone to prepare new clothes for him when they got to the city hall. He even had someone style Kiran's hair. However, when he remembered that all this was because of Snow Xander, he felt frustrated and simply could not smile. As for Snow, her expression was sourer than the sourest milk. She wanted to cancel the engagement, but Harold had forced her to get married. When she had tried to refuse, Harold clutched his chest, and she was worried that he would have a heart attack. She could not smile either. Both Kiran and Snow were weighed down by their own thoughts. If Kiran knew that the woman standing beside him was actually his fiancée, Snow Xander, he might actually laugh. After all, that meant that he would not become a widower anytime soon. Snow then said, "Smile, and I'll give you $100,000. At the same time, Kiran said, "Smile, and I'll cure your grandfather." They actually made promises to each other simultaneously. Surprised that they would end up tempting each other to smile using such offers, they laughed. "Yes, those are wonderful smiles," the photographer said and pressed down on the shutter. Thus, a picture of a happily wedded couple was produced. 15 minutes later, Kiran and Snow exited the city hall. They saw Harold staring at their marriage license. He looked so happy it was as if he was the one who got married. Snow felt so affronted that she wanted to cry. Meanwhile, Kiran was happy. He had a beautiful wife now. Even if she was not his real wife, he could still use her existence to mock Snow Xander and the Xander family. Then Kiran remembered something. He still did not know the woman's name. Just now, Harold had asked for his ID, and Harold was the one who did all the paperwork. All Kiran did was pose for a photo. Feeling awkward, Kiran turned to the woman and asked, "What's your name?" Snow shut her eyes and felt like she was about to lose it. Why did Harold make her get married to an idiot? She said nothing and just turned her head to the side. Harold walked over while laughing. "Kiran, do you want to stay at my place or stay somewhere else?" Already very thankful that Harold was willing to help him, Kiran said, "Till make my own arrangements. Once I cancel my engagement with Snow Xander tomorrow, I'll get a divorce with your granddaughter and return to Phoenix Hill." As if she was biting down on Kiran, Snow bit down on her bottom lip so hard that she nearly chewed through it. Harold, however, remained calm and said, "You don't have to go through such trouble to cancel your engagement. Just go to Xander Corporation to do it. Snow Xander is its CEO. She managed to become Xander Corporation CEO." Kiran's eyes flew wide open. He looked like he had just seen a ghost. Snow burned with rage. What was the meaning of this? Was he looking down on her? She was already beginning to wonder whether she had lost a few screws when she decided to Photoshop her photo in the first place. Kiran, just call me if you run into any trouble. He'll have someone send the marriage license to Xander Corporation tomorrow, Harold said with a smile. Kiran had wanted to take the marriage license, but he found himself unable to do so anymore. He was even beginning to wonder whether it was because Harold did not want him to know his granddaughter's name. However, he quickly felt embarrassed because he was taking advantage of the granddaughter, even if they were in a fake marriage. So, he nodded. Thank you, Mr. Xander. Harold then gave Kiran's ID back to him, along with a piece of paper. You're welcome. Here's your ID. I've written my number on this paper. Call me if you need help. Then, he looked at the fuming Snow. Let's go home. Chapter 6. Snow said nothing and got into the car. Kiran watched them leave. He then stuffed Harold's phone number into his pocket. It was useless to him. He did not even have a smartphone. He did not even know how to make a call using that device. He was orphaned at a young age, and his master then brought him to Phoenix Hill. He studied medicine and martial arts under his master. He had only ever left Phoenix Hill to accompany his master, and this was the first time he was so far away from home. Kiran watched the sunset. He had no place to stay and no money. So, he went to the train station and looked for a place to wait until the next day. However, since he was wearing an Almani suit, he looked out of place at the train station. Even so, he could do nothing about it. Harold had taken his old clothes away. All he could do was sit down on the ground and lean against the wall to sleep. Meanwhile, Snow glared at Harold with teary eyes once they returned to Harold's study room in the Xander family's mansion. She asked with great hurt, "Why did you do that?" "Why did I do that? You know perfectly well why I did what I did. It's entirely because of what you did, and you know what that is." Harold's expression was as dark as a thundercloud. "I did it because I didn't want to get married. Look at him. He looks like a barbarian." "How can I possibly be married to him?" Snow asked in a choked-up voice. "And so, you tricked him into wanting to cancel your engagement using a fake photo?" Harold demanded coldly. Snow had nothing to say about that. Harold said, "Given the chance, Kiran is the type of man who will rise to success. You might feel like he got lucky marrying you since you're richer and more powerful than he is, but you'll soon realize that he's out of your league." Snow scoffed in disdain. "He has come down from Phoenix Hill, and now Bayville is about to experience great change. As my granddaughter and his wife, you're both bound to achieve great success in Bayville and even Dragon's Land. Have you lost your mind, Grandpa? He's just a country bumpkin. You're not allowed to divorce Kiran. You're also to acknowledge him as your husband tomorrow at the company," Harold declared. Snow felt so mortified that she started crying. "Grandpa, Kiran is to have half of the Xander family's businesses from now on. Grandpa, you also help Kiran obtain Bayville Dragon's Mount." "What?" Snow's expression changed. Bayville Dragon's Mount was also known as Death Mountain because any family, no matter how strong they were, inevitably fell into decline the moment they had anything to do with Bayville Dragon's Mount. That had been the case since the York family, then the strongest family in Bayville 20 years ago. Wait, the York family? Kiran York? Could it be? She whipped her head to face Harold, only to notice that his eyes had become watery. "Grandpa is Kiran. Just remember that you're Kiran's wife. Don't let me down." Harold closed his eyes and said nothing else. Snow trembled and felt a chill run down her spine. Did the York family actually have any kin left? Could Kiran be one of them? Also, just how terrifying was their enemy? At that thought, Snow suddenly became uncertain. She had wanted to humiliate Kiran and then get a divorce upon seeing him tomorrow, but she was not so sure now. The next day, when Snow arrived at the company, she was anxious. She did not know how Kiran would propose canceling their engagement. How were they supposed to wrap this farce up? At that moment, Kiran was at the company entrance. Just as he was about to enter the company, he suddenly heard the roaring engine of a race car. Fortunately, Kiran had quick reflexes. He quickly jumped out of the way. Otherwise, he would have met an early death. The race car came to a halt, and a handsome man dressed in a white suit came out. Chapter 7. Right after the young man got out of the car, 4 other men got out from the cars behind his. They then used fresh red roses to create a heart shape at the company's entrance. They used so many red roses that they blocked the entrance. The roses were gorgeous under the sun. They looked like a beating heart, and the sight was so striking that anyone who saw it felt like they could see the young man's love. Many of Xander Corporation's employees and passers-by were drawn to the roses. They came forward to check it out, and they were amazed. The handsome man looked like nobility. With the roses and his white suit, he looked divine. Many of the employees started fawning over him. Wow, he's so rich and romantic. There are so many roses. They're beautiful. He's gorgeous. He's rich too. He's like a prince from a fairy tale. Who's he courting? That woman is so lucky. If he was trying to get me to become his girlfriend, I'd definitely agree to it. At that moment, someone recognized the man. Wait, isn't he Fabian Ziegler? He's one of the top 3 men in Bayville, right? Fabian Ziegler? My God, he's also the heir of the Ziegler family, and that's one of the 3 big families in Bayville. He's the epitome of a rich man. The Ziegler family has a net worth of hundreds of billions of dollars. They're true nobility. The women's comments and squeals rang out. Many of them wanted to approach Fabian because they wanted to be that lucky someone. Since Fabian's car had nearly run him over, Kiran was angry. But when he saw what was going on, he became interested. He wanted to know what sort of woman would drive such a man so mad with love. At that moment, someone retrieved a megaphone from one of the cars and handed it to Fabian. Fabian smoothed out his clothes and put on a handsome, confident smile. Then he turned the megaphone on, put it to his lips, and shouted in the direction of the company, "Snow Xander, I love you!" Snow Xander? The women watching this immediately pulled long faces. They looked like wilted flowers. They could never hope to compare to Snow. Kiran shuddered, and goosebumps broke out on his skin. He immediately remembered the woman's picture. In the next second, he gave Fabian a wide-eyed look, and his jaw fell slack. As he stared at Fabian, he imagined them doing the deed. He sure had unique tastes. Did he like big women in general? He imagined Fabian being surrounded by big women, and he snickered. His laughter broke the silence, and he immediately became the focus of everyone's attention. Fabian might have been smiling, but when he looked at Kiran, he glared at him. Still, his main priority was proposing to Snow, so he did not fly into a rage. With the megaphone in hand, he shouted in the direction of the company again, "Snow Xander, I want to marry you. Will you marry me?" Kiran had to slap his hand over his mouth to keep himself from laughing. He then saw the white box one of the subordinates was holding. Meanwhile, Snow was sitting in her office while her thoughts ran wild in her head. She wondered how Kiran would come to cancel the engagement. What sort of reaction would he have when he saw her? But when she remembered what her grandfather said and his expression, she knew that she would have to play the part of a miserable clown and beg Kiran not to divorce her. Suddenly, she heard Fabian shouting out his proposal, and she shot to her feet. What would Kiran do if he saw Fabian proposing to her? Chapter 8. She jogged over to the window and looked down. Her face immediately turned red with rage, and fury burned in her eyes as she grumbled, "That ugly bastard's here." She would have pretended not to hear Fabian in the past, but Kiran was going to drop by today, so she quickly went downstairs. At the same time, Fabian continued professing his love for Snow, but he had absolutely no idea what Snow was thinking. Kiran had already gotten used to the sight by this point. He even wanted to go forward and hug Fabian in sheer gratitude while saying, "You should have proposed to Snow earlier, man. Then I wouldn't have had to get into a fake marriage to cancel my engagement with her." Right then, Snow appeared at the company's entrance. She was dressed in the standard working woman's uniform, and she wore a pair of nude tights. She walked over quickly. When the employees saw Snow and the red roses on the ground, they looked envious. Only someone as beautiful as her was worthy of such a proposal. This was how a goddess should be treated. This was befitting of the most beautiful woman in Bayville. Kiran's eyes flew wide open, and he thought he was seeing things. Was Snow Xander his fake wife? Fabian smiled confidently and in a relaxed fashion. He thought that his confession had moved Snow. He handed the megaphone to his subordinate and walked to the center of the roses. Another subordinate handed him the white box Kiran saw earlier. Fabian opened it with a click and revealed the beautiful diamond ring inside. It shone with a brilliant light under the sun. The red roses, shining diamond ring, and Fabian's handsome looks once again made the scene incredibly beautiful. Fabian shouted, "Snow, I love you, marry me, and I'll make you the happiest woman ever." His confession was like a spark that lit up a passionate fire within the crowd. Someone gasped in amazement. Even the jealous women had to admit that Snow was the only woman worthy of a proposal like this. Their families were equally rich and powerful. They were equally gorgeous. If they got together, they would surely be a romantic, happy couple. Be with him. Kiss him. Cheers and cries for Snow to accept Fabian's proposal rose and echoed in the air. Fabian looked excited. He had prepared his proposal with great care. It was romantic and heartwarming. He was confident that Snow would be moved. His family was one of the 3 big families in Bayville and was growing in power. It was even showing signs of outshining the other 2 families, which were the Marsh family and the Quinn family. In comparison, the Xander family was currently in trouble. They did not have enough money and were surrounded by potential threats. The Xander family might appear strong, but danger was lurking around them. Only the Ziegler family could help the Xander family. Snow had no reason to reject him. In her anxious and frustrated state, Snow started looking around for Kiran, and she met his gaze. She instinctively stopped walking, and her face burned red. Fabian did not know the exact reason why Snow's face turned red. He just thought that she felt touched by his proposal. With the diamond ring in hand, he walked towards Snow. Snow, I love you. No matter how much time passes, I will always love you, Wait! Kiran suddenly shouted. Fabian was still smiling, but he was livid inside. He looked in the direction of the voice, only to notice that it was the person who had laughed at him just now. His expression turned dark. He ruined his proposal twice. Kiran ignored his reaction and walked forward before pointing at the building. Is this Xander Corporation? Chapter 9. Was this Xander Corporation? The people looked at each other. Was he an idiot? Why was he asking such a question? Fabian quelled his rage and just stared at Kiran coldly and with great animosity. Snow's face turned even redder. At that moment, she looked just like the roses on the ground, and it made her look even more gorgeous. No one answered Kiran's question. He just fired another question. How many Snow Xanders are there in Xander Corporation? What? Some of the people were already rolling their eyes. How many Snow Xanders could there be? Did he not hear Fabian loudly and passionately proclaim his love just now? Did he not see only one woman coming out of the company building? What an idiot. Meanwhile, Snow felt nervous. She knew that Kiran was worried that he had made a fool of himself. But she was even more worried about Kiran asking who the woman in the picture was. If he did, her image would be ruined. She regretted her past decisions so much that she wanted to just shoot herself. Even so, she still suppressed her anger, ignored everyone's confused stares, walked over and grabbed Kiran's arm. I've been waiting for you, honey. Her voice was sweet, and her face was red with bashfulness. She looked incredibly charming this way, and any man who saw her would feel their hearts flutter. But, honey? The employees thought that they were hearing things and looked at each other to seek validation. When did Snow get married? How could any man possibly catch her fancy? And how could she possibly fall in love with this bizarre-looking man? Kiran had no idea just how many Snow Xanders there were at the moment. But when he remembered that this Snow Xander in particular had gotten into a fake marriage with him to help him cancel his engagement with the other Snow Xander, he knew that he could not push her away. At the end of the day, he had taken advantage of her after all. He asked gently, what's going on? He was basically agreeing that this Snow Xander was his wife at this point. The crowd fell dead silent, and they looked at Fabian. Was he proposing to a married woman? Fabian's rage slowly froze over. He knew just how prideful Snow was, and she always looked like she would rather swallow a bullet than talk to another man. But now she was calling some other man her honey, and she even hugged his arm. Were pigs about to fly next? Even more surprisingly, this man who was unworthy of Fabian's attention was Snow's husband. Fabian felt humiliated and embarrassed. His expression grew cold, and he scowled at Snow. He asked, "Who is he?" "My husband." Snow leaned into Kiran at that point. "He's Kiran York." Even though she was about to die of shame, she still kept her emotions under control. She had to drive Fabian away and make sure Kiran said nothing about any morbidly obese Snow Xander. He also had to make sure Kiran did not know that she was his fiancée. Otherwise, if he said anything about her not even comparing to a village girl or a widow, she would become the laughingstock of Bayville in the future. Kiran was confused, but he could still tell that Snow hated Fabian. Since he was grateful that she married him to help him and to make sure that he could really cancel his engagement, he grabbed Snow by the waist and looked at Fabian. "She's my wife." Fabian scoffed in rage. Snow, even if you want to reject me, you should look for an appropriate excuse. At the very least, get yourself an outstanding man. That way I'll know that I can't compare to him. Why did you get yourself a husband like him? Did you actually think that I'd believe you married him out of love? His gaze landed on Kiran. That Almani suit is a counterfeit, right? Did you buy it off Amazon? Chapter 10. He pointed at Kiran's butt and the back of his suit. Or did you pick it up from a trash can? Kiran stayed at the train station last night. He sat on the ground and leaned against the wall to sleep, which was why the suit was covered in dust. The crowd was originally shocked by Snow and Kiran's words, but when they heard what Fabian said, they came to a realization. There was no way these two were a married couple. Considering how prideful Snow was, very few men caught Snow's attention, much less a man like this. Worried that Kiran was going to let the cat out of the bag, Snow said, "Fabian, I already told you plenty of times that we can never be together. I'll have you know that I just got married to my fiancée today." Fabian smiled confidently. "Snow, you can't deceive me. You don't even have a boyfriend, much less a fiancée. And you got married? Are you going to tell me you have children next?" Snow pushed Kiran forward and said resolutely, "He's my legally married husband." Fabian sneered. He did not believe her, and he said, "He's a good-for-nothing. None of the women here would fancy him, much less you." Fabian's repeated humiliation made Kiran burn with rage. "Are you looking down on me?" With a scoff, Fabian said, "Considering how dumb you are, yes. Do you have a house? A car? More than $10 million in your bank account?" Fabian continued provoking Kiran. Kiran shook his head honestly. "No." "Do you have a job?" Kiran shook his head again. "I just came here and I have nothing." Fabian became even more smug. What an idiot. He was penniless and had nothing to his name. How could he possibly compare to him? Very arrogantly, he said, "I'm the heir of the Ziegler family, and I'll be its master in the future. I'm currently the deputy CEO of Ziegler Corporation. You're unworthy of competing against me for Snow's hand." The crowd could not bear to watch Kiran's embarrassing confidence anymore and said, "You're worlds apart. You can't possibly compare to someone as rich as Fabian, you country bumpkin." "Exactly. How is a toad supposed to win against an eagle?" "Just leave. Don't make Mr. Fabian any angrier." Snow was nervous. In her heart, she prayed that Kiran would not run away impulsively. She would suffer the most if he did. She instinctively hugged Kiran's arm tighter. When Fabian saw this, he became even more certain that this was the cliché fake boyfriend situation. Unfortunately, he was not one of those cliché idiots who would fall for such a trick. He pointed at the Ferrari by his side. "Snow, I know you like Ferraris. It's a limited edition Ferrari, and there are only 5 of them in the world. I bought this for you for $50 million. $50 million? Whoa!" The crowd let out envious gasps again. Fabian smiled even more confidently. The poor country bumpkin could not possibly compare to him. Kiran then smiled calmly. "Are you trying to win over Snow's heart by using money? Would you say no to money?" Fabian retorted confidently. Kiran then grinned wickedly. "Are you saying that only people with money can court Snow? Or are you saying that Snow only cares about money?" Fabian's face turned red. "I'm not saying that Snow is materialistic. He loved Snow because of her looks, but also knew that Snow was prideful. Even if Xander Corporation lacked money, she would not like him just because of a Ferrari and a diamond ring." Fabian lost his composure at that point. With a smile, he said to Snow, "Snow, he's trying to sow discord between us." Meanwhile, Snow gained a new understanding of Kiran. It was as if he had become another man. She never knew how smart Kiran was. He must only have become stupid and dense because he was traumatized by her photoshopped picture.